The world often feels overwhelming. It seems like there's so much happening that we cannot control, so much injustice, so much hurt, and so many voices calling for change. We become quick to point out the problems, quick to criticize what's wrong in society, in our communities, and even in the lives of the people around us. It feels easier to focus on the chaos of the world than to confront the quieter, often more challenging task of looking inward. But what if the real power to change the world lies not in our ability to criticize, but in our willingness to look within and set our own house in perfect order first? What if the starting point for real transformation, both personal and collective, begins with the smallest of actions? The choices we make every day, the decisions about how we respond to life's challenges, and the way we show up for others and for ourselves. There's an incredible truth that we often overlook. We cannot change the world by pointing out all its flaws. We can only change the world by being the change we wish to see. And that change begins with us. It begins when we choose to stop blaming the circumstances, the people, or the systems for our struggles, and instead focus on how we can better ourselves. It begins when we take responsibility for our own thoughts, actions, and behaviors, and look deeply at the way we contribute to the very chaos we criticize. This is the foundation of true leadership, and it starts by setting our own house in order. To set our house in order is to be honest with ourselves. It is to examine our lives, not just on the surface, but deeply and truthfully. How often do we examine our thoughts, the beliefs that drive our behaviors, and the emotions that shape our reactions to life? How often do we take a moment to check in with ourselves to see if we are acting in alignment with our core values? Are we living with intention, or are we letting life happen to us? This process of setting our house in order isn't easy. It takes courage to face the truth about who we are, especially when we know that some of our thoughts, behaviors, and decisions are out of alignment with the life we want to lead. But it is in this discomfort, this reckoning with ourselves, that the most profound transformation occurs. It is in confronting our imperfections that we become more whole. And it is through this internal work that we find the clarity and strength to make a difference in the world. I often think about the power of small actions, the everyday decisions we make that may seem insignificant, but in reality hold enormous impact. When we choose kindness over judgment, understanding over criticism, patience over frustration, we begin to shape our inner world. It is not a matter of being perfect. It's about being honest. It's about showing up with integrity, with authenticity, and with a genuine desire to grow. When we are intentional about our inner order, we not only heal ourselves, but create a ripple effect that touches the lives of those around us. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to criticize others for their lack of organization or their inability to stay focused while we are struggling to keep our own lives in order? Have you ever pointed fingers at the world for its injustices, only to realize that you have unresolved issues in your own heart? It's something we all do. We get caught in the trap of believing that the world must change first before we can be at peace, before we can live the life we dream of. But this is the greatest lie we can tell ourselves. In order to create meaningful change in the world, we must first change ourselves. We must focus on setting our house in perfect order, our mental, emotional, and spiritual houses. We must clean up the clutter that holds us back, clear the space that's filled with old grudges, unhealed wounds, and limiting beliefs. We must release the baggage that we carry, the weight of old fears and doubts that keep us from moving forward. This inner work is not easy, but it is necessary. As Gandhi once said, be the change that you wish to see in the world. Setting your house in perfect order is not about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about creating a life that reflects your true self, your highest values, your deepest desires. It's about aligning your actions with your intentions and your words with your truth. When we do this, we not only feel more peace within ourselves, but we also become more capable of offering peace to the world around us. In a world where so many of us are distracted, overwhelmed, and disconnected, the act of setting our house in order is revolutionary. It is a quiet revolution, one that does not demand attention or accolades, but one that creates lasting change. We cannot wait for the world to change for us. We must change first, and only then will we have the wisdom and given the strength to lead others in this process. What's incredible about this process is that it doesn't require grand gestures or dramatic acts. It's the small, everyday choices that make the most difference. It's choosing honesty over deception, love over hate, empathy over judgment. It's showing up with presence, giving time to what truly matters, and letting go of the things that no longer serve us. It's about being intentional with how we spend our time, our energy, and our thoughts. As we begin to live more intentionally, our lives begin to reflect the world we wish to see, one filled with understanding, respect, and compassion. The truth is that we are the creators of our reality. Our thoughts, words, and actions shape the world we live in. We are not helpless bystanders watching life unfold. We are active participants, and we have the power to create change. Change that begins with us in the most personal, intimate ways. When we set our own house in perfect order, we unlock the potential for greatness, for peace, for harmony, not only within ourselves, but within our families, our communities, and ultimately the world. As we embark on this journey of self-reflection and growth, let us remember that it is not about being perfect, but about being present. It is about showing up every day, doing the best we can, and always striving to align our actions with our values. The world will continue to be messy, but when we clean up the mess inside ourselves, we begin to see the world through a different lens. We begin to see it with more clarity, more compassion, and more hope. In the end, setting our house in perfect order is not a destination, but a journey. It is an ongoing process of self-discovery, growth, and healing, and it is the most powerful contribution we can make to the world. Let's begin today by looking within, by being honest with ourselves, and by choosing to set our house in order, one small step at a time. It's incredibly easy to focus on everything wrong with the world. It's easy to see the flaws, the injustices, the chaos around us, and it often feels like we have no choice but to criticize, to point out the problems and speak out against the wrongs. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what would happen if, instead of focusing on everything out there, we turned our attention inward and started with the only thing we have real control over, ourselves? What if, before we started blaming the world, we took a hard, honest look at how we show up in the world? It's an uncomfortable thought, isn't it? We are quick to look at the cracks in others, to highlight their missteps, to judge their behaviors. But when we do this, we are often overlooking the cracks in our own foundation, the missteps in our own lives, the behaviors that we have normalized without ever considering their impact. The truth is, we cannot change the world by criticizing others, by pointing fingers at society, or by waiting for things to improve. The real power to change the world begins with us. It begins by setting our own house in order. When we take a moment to reflect on our own lives, we realize that real change doesn't start on the outside, it starts on the inside. The world is a reflection of who we are at our core, the way we treat others, the way we show up for our families, for our colleagues, and for our friends. These are the microcosms of the larger world around us. If we want the world to change, we must first change ourselves. And that means we have to be brave enough to examine the ways we are contributing to the chaos, to the negativity, and to the division that we criticize. It's tempting to believe that if everyone else would just get their act together, things would be different. If others would just stop making mistakes, stop causing harm, and stop being selfish, the world would be a better place. But the reality is, it's not their actions we need to control. It's our own. We cannot wait for others to change before we change. We cannot wait for the world to be less flawed before we start working on ourselves. The change we seek in the world must begin with the change we are willing to make within ourselves. What does this change look like? It starts with humility. It starts with the courage to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, that we too have room to grow, and that the change we want to see is not going to happen by force, but through genuine self-improvement. Setting our house in order is not about creating a perfect life. It's about creating an intentional life, a life where we live in alignment with our values, our principles, and our purpose. It's about living in such a way that when others look at us, they see someone who is willing to grow, to evolve, and to take responsibility for their part in the world. It's easy to fall into the trap of judgment. It's easy to see others' flaws and think that their actions are the problem. But when we focus on criticizing others, we are only distracting ourselves from the real work, the work of looking inward and examining our own behavior. We need to ask ourselves, am I living in a way that reflects the person I want to be? Am I being the kind of leader, friend, parent, and citizen that I want to see in others? It's in this question that the power of transformation lies. So much of the criticism we offer to others comes from a place of fear. Fear that things won't work out, fear that we're not in control, fear that we are somehow missing the mark. But this fear blinds us to the truth. The only thing we can control is how we respond to life. We cannot control the actions of others, but we can control our own actions. And when we take ownership of our own behavior, when we choose to show up with love, with compassion, and with integrity, we set the stage for a different kind of world. Living in alignment with our values doesn't mean we won't face difficulties. It doesn't mean we won't encounter obstacles, frustrations, and challenges along the way. But it does mean that when those difficulties arise, we will have the inner strength to face them with grace and with purpose. It means we will have the courage to act from a place of authenticity rather than react from a place of fear or anger. When we are grounded in our own truth, when we set our own house in order, we become a force for positive change in the world. The beauty of this work is that it doesn't require grand gestures or dramatic acts. It's not about making huge, sweeping changes overnight. It's about the small, consistent actions we take every day. It's about choosing kindness over judgment, empathy over indifference, love over hate. It's about showing up for ourselves and for others in the way we wish the world would show up for us. When we choose to set our house in order, we choose to live with intention and integrity, and that is the kind of leadership the world desperately needs. But there's another powerful truth here. When we set our house in order, we also free ourselves. We free ourselves from the constant weight of blame and criticism. We release the burden of feeling like we are responsible for everyone else's choices. We stop holding on to the past and start focusing on what we can control, our own actions and our own mindset. This freedom allows us to lead from a place of peace, to contribute from a place of abundance, and to create from a place of love. When we live in alignment with our values, we naturally attract the kind of energy we want in the world. We draw in those who share our vision, who are committed to growth, and who are willing to work alongside us to create a better future. And just as importantly, we begin to see the world through a different lens. We begin to see the goodness in others, the potential for growth, and the beauty in every moment. We begin to understand that the world is not a fixed entity, but a dynamic, ever-evolving place that responds to our action. The world may not always be kind and it may not always be fair, but the way we show up in the world can make a difference. The way we choose to act, to think, and to live can inspire others to do the same. And when we choose to set our own house in order, we not only change our own lives, we change the world. This is the power of taking responsibility for ourselves. This is the power of choosing to be the change we want to see. It's not easy, and it won't happen overnight, but it is the most important work we can do. So let's stop waiting for the world to change first. Let's start with ourselves. Let's set our house in order. And in doing so, let's lead the way for others to do the same. The world needs us to be the change. Let's rise to the occasion.